Right, I'm going to start by introducing the star of our show. I know it's not Terry, it's not me. It's the cinema you see on the screens there. In fact, the view you see there is from our chummy seats in our auditorium in the Birks Cinema. And what's on the screen is the front view of our cinema in Aberfeldy, as Jackie mentioned. Why are we here talking about the cinema? Well, in 2012, the leader organisation at the time provided us with some key funding. It came at a crucial time for us, and in fact, it's allowed us to be where we are at the moment. We're going to split this into two parts. Now, why are there two of us? Well, Terry and I, since we joined the Birks Cinema Trust, have basically shared everything equally. So we thought, well, why stop now? So what we've got here are basically a press release of the 8th of January this year, which gives you a picture of where we are now. And then a refurbishment journey, which Terry is going to take you through, alongside the press release. And then I'm going to take the last two bits, talk about the leader funding, and then how we've run the cinema in the 3 years since we've opened. So really there are two journeys that we're going to talk about. One is the refurbishment journey, which Terry's going to handle, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we've run the cinema in the 3 years since we've opened. So over to you, Terry.
Thanks, Doug. I'm the light relief part of this partnership. I'll start with the press release. You won't be able to read too much on the screen, so I'll go through it quickly. It's a press release for the 8th of January, and it's a very proud point for the cinema. December recorded our greatest number of attendances, over 4,000 in that month, an income of 42,000. This was huge for the cinema. We set a new film record. Star Wars topped Spectre. That may not be of any interest to some people, but it was pretty fantastic for us because it puts us on track to become self-sufficient. John Freeman, the chair of the Birks Cinema Limited, which is our trading company, his comment, fantastic year, promising future, special thanks to all. Wish all in Aberfeldy, wider community of Perthshire, a very happy new year. Nice little touch at the end of the year, a great year for us. Our cinema manager, Simon Lewis, who has worked astonishing wonders, we got Spectre a day before New York did. Beat that if you can. Films coming up, some are already there. Bridge of Spies, personally recommend that one. Danish Girl and Carol. We're up to the mark, we're beyond the mark. And we're not just an art house cinema. Please remember that. Some people still have an element of doubt. Okay, a quick flip through our history. 3rd of July 1939, that's the monochrome, black and white to some, photograph. 470-seater then, took 3 months to build, single skin, a roof we wouldn't be proud of today, and a very hurried opening just before the Second World War. Come forward, 1982, cinema had gone off stream. It went through a metamorphosis of Mugen's Arcade, bingo parlour, that sort of thing. 2005, after it had been bought by a developer who decided he couldn't develop, a sailboard went up. So in late 2005, 06, a small group of 3 people. So conceived around a table, the question was, what if Aberfeldy's cinema reopened? Times moved on. 2007 and 2008, there was a successful fundraising that led to feasibility studies on potential local demand, the structure and viability of this old 1939 Art Deco cinema. Forget that not. 2009, our charity was constituted. Further successful fundraising led to the purchase outright of the building. We then got funding to render it weather-tight, and that was vital. And plans were developed for a 100-seater. We've now got 104. There's improvement for you. 2010-12. This was a fascinating move by the people then involved. I'd just come on board, but to get Screen Machine to visit Aberfeldy. For those who don't know about Screen Machine, it's a fascinating 80-seater lorry that tours the Highlands and Islands and shows up-to-date films in a modern environment, excellent sound, excellent film. We became in Aberfeldy a star turn for Screen Machine. But what it really did was it wakened a demand for the cinema in Aberfeldy. Forget not, we're talking about 1,900 people was really the size of that little old Aberfeldy. 2011-12, final fundraising, pushed and completed at the end of January. We were within 1 day of losing our match funding. It was a terribly tight time. But we finished up with 1.2 million from SRDP, Big Lottery, Creative Scotland, Leader, and another 8 funders. By 2012 April, we had our contractually imposed refurbishment start date. We really tightened down on our developer. We had a short list of 6 contractors. We assembled a professional team, builders on site, all within a 3-month time frame. This was a frantic time for all involved in the trust. 2012-13, refurbishment requires replacement of roof, total soundproofing, almost total soundproofing of the auditorium, and an efficient air handling system. We're in the modern world now, folks, nothing like the old 1939 building. By the end of March, our tight project keys in hand management contract with Haddon Construction, who were the contractors, we successfully enforced completion. And it was an enforcement, but it was largely due to leader funding. Birks Cinema Trust and the role of leaders funding. That completes my part of this double act. I'll pass over to Doug.
Thank you, Terry. Yeah, leader funding. As you can see, it wasn't the largest part of the funding we received, but it came at a crucial time. It came with a lot of responsibilities attached to it, which meant we had to show a lot of discipline in producing and completing the required forms. But what it really gave us was the possibility of recruiting someone who became a key player for us, our part-time finance coordinator, who over a 13-month period kept not only the costs of the project in line by giving us almost daily updates, but also gave us full information concerning the funding that we needed, when we needed it, and allowed us to plan ahead. And basically, because she was quite a strict lady, she kept us all in line, and the budget and the actuals actually came together very well. And it was really thanks to this finance coordinator that we were able to have a very good relationship with Haddon Construction. She became the go-to person. She was able to answer their questions, and she was able to answer our questions. And frequently, the two meant, because we had the same answer from the same person, we were able to talk the same language, we were able to talk the same timelines, we were able to basically get on very well. So Terry's mentioned it was a frantic time at the beginning where we had to get our contractor on site within a very short time frame. But once he was on site, our finance coordinator allowed us to make sure he came off site at the due date. April 2013 was a critical date for us. That was the day when we had, well, on the 20th of April, we had to open the cinema for a variety of reasons, but mainly because it was still Easter holidays. We wanted to get some children in there early on. Children are a very important part of our customer base, and we needed to get some funds coming in. And again, thanks to a lot of careful planning by our team, but also by the finance coordinator, we were able to achieve the deadline. I think it's fair to say that that was an extremely well spent 22,000 on the part of Leader. It allowed us to reach objectives within the time frame we needed. So let's go on to the second journey, if you like. What's happened since we opened? And in many ways, this is almost as great a challenge as actually constructing, obtaining funding, and refurbishing the cinema. In June 2012, we set up a trading subsidiary, which had a separate volunteer board, which shared 2 members from the trust board, and that separate board set up, first of all, the management team, then the various service offers, because we're not just the cinema, we offer a variety of other services as well. They had to establish the operating procedures. We had a launch package, which included multiple events. All of that had to be established at the same time as the cinema was being refurbished. So we had two separate teams. One was the trading subsidiary and the other the trust itself. The trust looked after the refurbishment, the trading subsidiary looked after the preparation for going live. Coming back to our the Leader finance coordinator, because she had done such a great job and she was working only part-time on the construction side, we actually brought her in as launch coordinator as well. And because the Leader terms of engagement allowed us to pay, shall we say, a very substantial amount for this role, we were able to obtain an excellent person. And she was just as successful as a launch coordinator as she had been as a project coordinator. Again, a critical part for us. So our startup was the 20th of April, and it's called a soft opening because we didn't talk a great deal about the 20th, but we did have lots of launch events. I mentioned earlier that we've got a large number of different activities, offers to the customer. This is because we wanted to be known as a visitor destination venue. We knew that our catchment area was not sufficient to support a cinema. We had to make sure that there was a substantial proportion of the many, probably 80,000 visitors a year that go to Highland Perthshire, Pitlochry, Aberfeldy, Dunkeld, Killin, Kinlochranach, all that area is our catchment area. We had to attract the visitors as well. And it was felt that the only way we could do this was to offer not just film and not just live events, but also teas, coffees, snacks, bar services, locally sourced meals. We offered hot meals, prepared on site. We also offered functions and in-brochure and on-screen advertising services. So it's a lot of different offers, but we need to bring in as much as we can in the way of funding from our customers. Soft openings, we opened to the public on the 20th of April, but we had our official gala opening night on the 30th of November, where Alan Cumming, our patron, attended. Now, you'll see from the photo here, actually 4 of the key players are there. The lady in the center with the blue shoulder is Charlotte Flower, who at the time was our chair. And Charlotte took us through all the difficult times, all the way through until we were open. She was the driving force for a large part of what we achieved. Next to her, behind her, is Alan Cumming, of course. But the gentleman facing away from us is a gentleman called Robin Baker, who was our architect. And he's a local architect based in Aberfeldy. He organised and managed the professional team that supervised Haddon. And it's because of Robin's efforts that we have a real quality cinema in place. And the lady on the left is one of our local councillors, and Kate Howe was very important to us in organising support and helping with steps in funding. So, official opening 20th November. What's happened since then? Well, the year to end March 2014, as I've mentioned, we've got the smallest catchment population in the UK, of any cinema in the UK. And we had 2 boards, but they both had to go through a big learning curve. And our admissions fell slightly short of our budget target. Not hugely, 5% short. The year to end March 2015, how did we get on? Well, what we've done basically is each year we've changed, we've evolved, we've tried to meet what our customer wants by introducing new things, by changing what we do. And this continuous program of changes to our film offer, it's really difficult identifying which films people in Highland Perthshire want to see, really want to see, and live events as well. Which live events do they really want to see? It's much easier for us now, after 3 years. We understand what we want, but we did not really understand what our customer wanted to see back in 2013. So we've evolved our film offer, we've evolved our cafe and our functions offers, and we've changed our procedures, we've changed our structures. We've had to introduce measures to slow down the high turnover of staff. At the moment, we tend to pay minimum wage, but we've moved away from that, or at the beginning we did. We've moved away from that. We need to keep our staff. We need to build relationships with our customers. And we had to bring in a new assistant manager position. That was a critical step. It took place actually in early 2015, but it's allowed us to not lose our general manager, because it's just too much for one manager to deal with. So continual evolution is key. Running our cinema, further highlights, or perhaps not quite so much of a highlight, this one, but we are victims of our own success to some extent here. Our increased film audiences mean that there are more food outlets, more restaurants, more cafes in Aberfeldy than there were when we originally planned the cinema. Not just a few more, but actually probably doubled in number in Aberfeldy. And we found that we could not compete in this increased, with the increased number of restaurants. Each of them offers something different, so there was a greater variety on offer, and we were not able to compete with our hot meal offer. However, everything else is still there. We still have all of our cafe bar services. We offer teas, coffees, cakes, scones. We offer lots of snacks for children, etc. We offer alcohol. We just don't offer hot meals at the moment. Now we're looking at other options here, and there may well be another change coming through quite soon. And as Terry mentioned, we've actually had the best quarter, not just the best month, but the best quarter we've ever had. 11% increase on our previous best quarter, largely thanks to Simon Lewis, our general manager, who really knows which films are needed for which audience. But again, Simon is now looking at our 2016-17 year and saying, well, what can we offer that's different? further evolution required. You can see the autumn menu on the right there. You probably can't read it, but that was a considerable change. That was autumn 2015, just before we closed. That was a considerable evolution from the menu we had offered in 2014, which is a considerable change from the 2013 menu. It wasn't enough, however, to keep our hot meals menu open. So, next steps in our journey, and here again I'm going to ask Terry to help me out. We have to align costs with our proven levels of income. Now, because we've been operating for 3 years, we now know quite well what we can expect in the way of revenues. We know when to expect those revenues. One of the problems, actually, of a Highland cinema is that April, May, and June, it's like a drought. Virtually nobody goes to the cinema in April, May, and June. It's partly because of the films. Film releases in that period are always not very good, and very few of them attract our audience. But it's also because we've got much better weather. People want to enjoy their gardens, they want to go out in the hills. We have very slow attendances in that quarter. And we have to plan for that and manage that. So we are looking at ways of managing costs. But we didn't know that when we started. It's only into our third year that we are now confident that we know what the fourth year will give. So learn as we go along. We have to continue to strengthen our customer base by personalizing marketing contacts with customers. That's quite important because we actually have a significant proportion of our selling is through the internet. If you see our standout there, we've got brochures, and they're very attractive brochures. But this is Highland Perthshire we're talking about. A lot of our customers live a long way away from the cinema. They're not going to come into the cinema to get a brochure, our programme, but they will go online. So we're investigating and evolving there as well. Terry, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, the next option, or the next point, the bullet point we have here, is we're investigating 3 options for housing a second screen. This is an enormous step for us, only 3 years in. But one of the problems of a single-screen cinema is that when you take a blockbuster, you're committed to 4 times a day for a couple of weeks. And then you can be losing up to 95% of your ticket revenue to the distributor. We were lucky. With Star Wars and Spectre, we got down to only 65% of our ticket revenue going to the distributor. But that's what you have to do to get in at day one. And here's a point when I mentioned earlier that we did get Spectre before New York, which meant that we had a very big audience, and the demographic expands all the time. And we wanted the younger audience to come in, and they did. However, investigating the possibilities of a second screen is an enormous worry for a treasurer, so I'll stop there. Right, increased local and national fundraising activities is our 4th bullet point. And this is constant. Cinemas find it very difficult to make money. Doug's mentioned that we had to close the cafe, a real blow. We were doing a great meal deal offer, but if people don't come in, then you can't sustain it. And it's a charity at the top of the point that's effectively funding all this. So what else are we going to do? Well, out on our board, we've had a successful calendar which really caught the imagination of local people. There are still copies available, folks, and they're only half price. You can even, for full price, get a calendar signed by Alan Cumming, our patron. He was over from New York making a part of a series for NWBC called Alan Cumming's Scotland. And he was great. He came in and we said, could you sign a couple of calendars? And he said, give me a box, I'll stay and help. Great lad. He's been an enormous help to us. Other things, we run a seat sponsorship scheme. If anyone's got £1,000 spare, you can have a plaque on a seat. You can even have your name on a beautiful board that's about to go up that I've been fairly instrumental in getting together, and shows in a silhouette of the cinema with a seating plan, who's sponsored what, or what inscriptions are on the seats. It's caught interest quite well. And then we're also now part of the Weather Lottery. People may not have heard of that, but in fact it's a very successful umbrella organisation that runs lotteries for sports clubs, cinemas, enterprises all over. It actually means that for the punter, if you'll pardon that expression, they pay £1 a week. You actually buy a quarter for £13. But we, as the operator, we don't take the money, but we are paid. And by the time I've done the VAT return and tweaked all those little bits of figures, we end up keeping 59% of the money that's actually gambled. So it's a great way for supporting any enterprise, and there's a little bit of work involved, the poor old treasurer, but it does result in a stream of money coming in, and it's a regular stream. So that's another thing we're doing, and we're constantly looking, and if anyone's got any brighter ideas, I'd be delighted to hear them. I think our time is up. Please come and see us on the stand, buy a programme if you can be persuaded. I can do that quite easily. Thanks for your attention.